Have you ever noticed how the most intelligent people you know often prefer to be alone? Not because they are antisocial, not because they are incapable of connection, but because they've discovered something most people spend their entire lives avoiding. They've realized that solitude isn't loneliness. It sets freedom. Arthur Schopenhauer, one of history's most penetrating philosophers, understood this better than almost anyone. He spent most of his life deliberately choosing silence over society, and from that silence came insights about human intelligence, creativity, and consciousness that still disturb people today. But here's the part that unsettles most minds. Schopenhauer didn't retreat because he was broken. He withdrew because he was sharp enough to see through the illusions that keep most people clinging desperately to social validation, group thinking, and the exhausting theater of fitting in. Today, we're going to walk into territory that may make you uneasy, because what Schopenhauer discovered was simple and yet terrifying. The ones who choose solitude aren't running away from intelligence. They're running toward it. While the crowd conforms, compromises, and dulls itself with endless noise, the truly intelligent do something radical. They think. This is instead a hymn to antisocial behavior. It is instead a call to isolation. It's an attempt to understand why the most brilliant minds in history chose solitude as the foundation of their greatest achievements, and why this choice exposes a form of intelligence most people never touch. Schopenhauer once wrote, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone." But what he meant was far more dangerous. The moment you need others to tell you who you are, what to think, how to feel, you have surrendered the very essence of human consciousness, your ability to think independently. Solitude, for the intelligent, is not an escape. It sets an initiation, because here's the first truth. Schopenhauer saw the will of the masses as intellectual suicide. Most people never realize how little of their thinking actually belongs to them. Their opinions, preferences, values, even their emotions, are shaped by the groups they cling to, the media they consume, the invisible pressures that bend them without their consent. The intelligent, however, come to a chilling realization. The moment you step into a group, even a group of two, you are no longer thinking with your full mind. Part of you fractures. One half thinks, the other half manages impressions, avoids conflict, seeks approval, or keeps the peace. It's not deliberate, it's instinct, a mechanism of survival written deep into the brain. But it costs you something. Your originality, your courage, your edge. And so, most people never taste the raw force of their own intelligence because they're never truly alone with their thoughts. They move from family chatter to workplace performance to social distractions, never escaping the constant flood of other people's voices. But the intelligent, the dangerous few, choose differently. They decide that access to their own mind is worth more than applause. They know their sharpest insights, their deepest visions, their most creative breakthroughs are not born in crowds, but in the silence of solitude. Watch closely. In group conversations, the intelligent seem distant, detached, not because they don't set care, but because a part of their mind is always elsewhere, observing, watching the subtle ways group thought devours individuality, studying how the collective dulls the edge of truth. And in that silence, they hold their weapon, independent thought. They've learned that the price of belonging to most groups is intellectual conformity, and they have decided that price is far too high. Second insight. Schopenhauer called it the art of being alone without being lonely. A discipline that demands a level of inner development most people never even attempt. There sits a profound difference between someone who is alone because they cannot connect and someone who chooses solitude because they have cultivated an inner world vast enough to replace the crowd. Schopenhauer spent decades building what he called the world as representation, the boundless landscape of thought, imagination, and vision. He did not need constant entertainment. He did not crave stimulation. His own mind was enough. This terrifies those who have never developed inner richness. They cannot imagine long hours of solitude without sinking into boredom, anxiety, or despair. They have never learned to enjoy their own company because their inner world is barren, a wasteland that punishes them. The moment silence descends. But the intelligent, those who have cultivated depth, discover something different. They realize that their own consciousness, properly sharpened, is more fascinating than most conversations, more rewarding than most gatherings, more intoxicating than the endless distractions of media. This doesn't happen by accident. It demands what Schopenhauer called the cultivation of mind, reading deeply, thinking systematically, exploring beauty, philosophy, and creation. They have turned their solitude into a palace, a place they enter willingly, not as prisoners, but as sovereigns. For them, being alone feels like returning home. They can spend hours, even days, without another voice, yet never feel abandoned, because they are not truly alone. They are in dialogue with the greatest minds through books. They are chasing questions most people fear to ask. They are building work that emerges from obsession rather than obligation. To outsiders, such people appear mysterious, even threatening. Their serenity in solitude is unsettling. It challenges the fragile belief that happiness must be fed by validation, distraction, and noise. Third insight. Schopenhauer recognized that solitude breeds intellectual independence, the courage to think thoughts no one else has ever thought, because you are not constantly polishing your ideas against the dull stone of consensus. History's most radical breakthroughs were born not in groups, but in isolation. Newton's laws, Einstein-Sedge's relativity, Darwin-Sepp's evolution, Schopenhauer's own philosophy, all emerged from minds left alone, long enough to wander into forbidden territory. When you are surrounded by others, your thinking bends. It contracts around what they find acceptable, practical, or sane. Even the kindest, most intelligent companions still tether your imagination with invisible strings. But in true solitude, the mind becomes untamed. You can entertain dangerous ideas. You can follow curiosity into the absurd, the useless, the incomprehensible. You can spend months in thought, shaping insights that no group would ever allow. This is where genius hides, not in collaboration, not in committee, but in the lone figure staring into silence, refusing to look away. The intelligent who choose solitude know this. Their greatest gift to the world will not come from echoing its noise, but from returning with thoughts it could never generate on its own. It takes courage to walk there, because there is no validation, no applause, no proof you are on the right path. Only silence, uncertainty, and the weight of your own mind. But those who endure cross into originality. Fourth insight. They have mastered what Schopenhauer called the economics of attention. They understand that mental energy is finite. Every conversation, no matter how trivial, exacts a cost. You are not only processing words, you're decoding emotions, navigating unspoken motives, calculating the endless mathematics of human interaction. And so the intelligent retreat, not from people, but from the hidden cost of wasting their attention. They refuse to spend the sharpness of their mind on small talk, performance, or shallow obligations. They choose solitude not out of weakness, but because it preserves the most valuable resource they possess, the undivided power of their own thought. They self-realize something most people never dare admit. The mind has limits, a finite reservoir of energy, a bandwidth that can be spent on creation or wasted on chatter, and they have chosen. They would rather invest it in thinking, learning, and building than bleed it away in the endless maintenance of shallow relationships. It sounds cold until you understand what they're protecting: their intellectual fire, their creative force, their ability to focus so deeply it carves through illusion. They know these tools are fragile, easily dulled by too much social contact, so they guard them ruthlessly. Yes, they keep a handful of meaningful connections, but they sever the rest. No casual small talk, no crowded networking rituals, no energy poured into masks and performances. Schopenhauer himself lived this way, walking alone, eating alone, constructing his days around a single priority: protecting his mind. To outsiders, he seemed strange, depressed, detached, but his solitude gave birth to ideas that still haunt the world. The intelligent who choose solitude have made a strategic decision: depth over breadth, quality over quantity, truth over popularity. Fifth insight, Schopenhauer called it philosophical vision. The longer you stand apart, the more the veil drops. You begin to see patterns invisible to the crowd. You notice how much of life is trivial ritual, how social dynamics loop endlessly, repeating the same games with different faces. From this vantage point, people appear as actors trapped in roles, their fears and desires driving them more than their choices ever could. This is not misanthropy, it is clarity. But clarity has a price, because once you see the illusions, it becomes almost impossible to pretend they matter. And so the solitary person drifts at the edge of society, present, but never fully inside. Schopenhauer wrote of the suffering of existence, the hidden engine beneath human behavior: desire, fear, status, the endless craving to belong. Most are pulled by these forces unconsciously, puppets dancing on invisible strings. The intelligent solitary resists, not because they are superior, but because they are unwilling to betray their own vision for the comfort of the crowd. They trade ease for honesty, belonging for authenticity, approval for truth. They can still enter society when they wish, but they enter as observers, not dependents, contributors, not performers. And here lies Schopenhauer's most dangerous revelation. Those who choose solitude are not rejecting humanity. They are preparing to face it with weapons the crowd will never forge: original thought, unshaken vision, wisdom carved in silence. Solitude is not escape, it is preparation. It is the workshop where authenticity replaces performance, where contribution replaces consumption, where insight sharpens into something that threatens the very system built on conformity and validation. That is why the solitary are unsettling. They have uncovered a secret most never glimpse, that the mind, developed in silence, becomes capable of visions that group thinking could never produce. And when you feel unease around such a person, someone entirely content in their aloneness. It is not simply social awkwardness. It is recognition. You are in the presence of someone who has stepped outside the machinery of validation, someone whose identity no longer depends on applause. They are not running from intelligence. They are running toward it. And what they bring back from that darkness, from that silence, may be exactly what the world is missing.